all that was for naught. All right. We should be live now. Everyone, hello. Welcome to the Carolina Weather Group. I'm Scotty Powell, panelist, along with panelist Evan Fisher. We're going to be talking about the active weather that's going to be taking place here in the Carolinas over the next 48 hours, Evan. Um, you know, yesterday and today, I know today was a little bit more cloudier, but we've had a pretty nice stretch of weather, Evan. Uh, I'm going to toss it to you, kind of talk about yesterday's heat that we saw, why get this live stream going. Then we'll kind of get into the severe weather and the flash flooding aspect. So, Evan, we saw a lot of warm temperatures yesterday.
Oh yeah, it was awesome. I think everyone in the Carolinas probably enjoyed yesterday's weather, especially Scotty, because I know that you're a big fan of summer and warmer weather. But across the state, we saw widespread temperatures in the 60s, and even some people got into the 70s. I believe Charleston had a high of 76 yesterday, and even places like Asheville up in the mountains of North Carolina had a high of 72. Now, for many of those places, this was the first 70-degree day of the year and of the decade for that matter. And it was pretty early, maybe about 3 weeks early for Asheville. I'm not exactly sure how it lined up for the rest of the state, but nonetheless, it was the earliest since 2017 for Asheville. Not a record by any stretch of the imagination. Asheville's hit 80 before in January, but it was a beautiful day, about 20 to 25 degrees above average with sunny skies. So I hope that y'all enjoyed it, because Scotty and I definitely did.
It was really nice. Thoroughly enjoyed the weather. I'm going to pull up the live stream here on my phone right quick. So if you guys have any questions as we talk about the upcoming weather, please do that. So bear with me for just a second here. I'm going to turn the volume down. So all right. So I'm monitoring our Facebook Live here. I think we're all streamed up and ready to go. So Evan, you're kind of talking about that warm weather that we had yesterday. It's still kind of warm today. We're going to continue seeing warm temperatures over the next few days, but a pretty dynamic setup is going to be moving into the Carolinas starting tomorrow, where we're going to get rounds and rounds of heavy rain moving into the area, Evan. And, it's been a pretty wet winter. Unfortunately, we've not been able to link that precipitation up with the cold temperatures. But it's been a pretty wet winter, and it looks like we're going to see a pretty significant heavy rain event move into the area over the next 48 hours. So I'm going to stream, I'm going to show you guys the water vapor loop, kind of give you the setup of what's taking place. So as you can see, this is just kind of tells us the moisture that's in the air. As you can see, we're here in the Carolinas. It may be kind of hard to see here, but here's North South Carolina. We're going to be watching our moisture flow actually come from the Gulf of Mexico, which, normally is the case, but this air is actually tapped into some Pacific air. We kind of sometimes call this the Pineapple Express. There's all kinds of different terms for this, but it's actually got some Pacific origin to this air, and it's just pumping in a lot of moisture. And as we know, when we see moisture coming in from the southwest, Evan, you've lived in the mountains of North Carolina, now in Charleston, but you're still connected. Anytime we see that moisture fetch coming out of the southwest, we always know that there's a threat for some heavy rain, and we're going to definitely see some heavy rain. I know you have looked at some of the latest data, so I'll stop sharing the screen so you can share yours. Of just kind of seeing the rainfall totals that we could see here in Western North Carolina and actually all of North Carolina and South Carolina.
Yeah, so this unfortunately is a kind of setup where we tend to see very large totals and a lot of flooding across Western North Carolina, as well as down into even the Western Piedmont and upstate South Carolina. So it's going to be the biggest rain event of the year, and it's going to just wash out on Thursday. We're going to start to see rain showers pick up in intensity and spatial coverage tomorrow afternoon across the western part of North Carolina, and then that will quickly spread east across the state going into Thursday. And I think we're really honing in on Thursday as the weather maker, the big day, both from a heavy rain perspective as well as a severe perspective, which we'll cover here in a little bit. But this is just the WPC, the Weather Prediction Center's a 5-day rainfall total, and you can see that bullseye is really across west. Let me see if I can get my pointer up for us. You can see the bullseye is really across that southwestern portion of North Carolina and a little bit of upstate But even still, this 4-inch contour stretches all the way up into parts of Gaston and Lincoln County, and even up past Winston-Salem and up towards Danville and into southwestern Virginia. So this is going to be a not just a local specific little heavy rain event for the southwestern mountains, but this is going to be 4 inches widespread, which is pretty unusual and definitely the first big event of the year. You can see down towards the coastal areas, they're going to be seeing a little bit less. Down in Charleston, maybe only half an inch to an inch. But still, nonetheless, if you're west of Columbia and Fayetteville and Raleigh, you're going to be seeing 1 to 2 inches at least, with some places seeing 3 to 5 widespread across that western section of the Carolinas.
Yeah,
If we
and
go,
Evan, I was going to tell you, we've got this popped up. I'm sure you probably looked at as well, but a lot of the data coming in this afternoon, I think after WPC updated this, was actually showing some totals, like you were talking about, maybe even 6, 7 inches, especially in Western North Carolina up against the Blue Ridge Escarpment. And so definitely some flooding concerns there. I know you've got the flash flood the outlook graphic here in just a second. That'll kind of highlight again the areas you were talking about with the potential for sand flooding.
right, and like you're talking about, that Blue Ridge Escarpment is really in this area, and then again over here in some of the high elevations of Western North Carolina. And those are the areas that will likely see those biggest totals. I've kind of circled them here, but that's where you could see guaranteed 3 to 5, potentially, 5 to 7, and plus for the high elevations. And you may not think that heavy rain in the high elevations matters because no one lives there, but it does, because it has to flow down off the mountains and it all converges into the rivers and streams. And the Davidson River is in that area, as well as the French Broad flowing north out of Asheville. So there's a lot of waterways that are going to be threatened this weekend. If we move over to the next one, yeah, here you go.
Another threat with that flooding also, Evan, could be the potential for seeing some landslides. We know through the
Right.
gorge there on Interstate 40, there's potential always with heavy rain events to see some rock slides. But with this much heavy rain coming in a short amount of time, as as you were talking about, this isn't like a week-long rain process. This is going to be happening within a day or two. So definitely the potential for seeing some landslides, mudslides like that is also a little bit more elevated, just because all of this is going to be falling in just a short amount of time.
Absolutely. And it seems like we talk about this all the time. Since 2018, we've seen a lot of these big, heavy rain events, more so than in years past. And landslides have almost become the new norm. There's a big one in Nantahala Gorge just a month ago, and another one on 40 a month before that. So like you said, Scotty, those areas are super prone. I believe that Brad Panovich was tweeting earlier saying that the flash flood guidance, 6 hour flash flood guidance in most of this area that's highlighted here in red is just 2 to 3 inches of rain in 6 hours. So that means if 2 to 3 inches of rain were to fall in a 6 hour time frame, flash flooding would likely occur very suddenly as flash. And that's the kind of flooding that you don't expect it, and all of a sudden there's water rushing down the streets of mountain towns and even flatland areas. Urban areas particularly see a lot of troubles from all the concrete and runoff issues, and that's really what the WPC is highlighting here with this graphic. If you look at the red contour here, this is a moderate threat for flash flooding 3 days out, so on Thursday. And this is the area that they're honing in on for the biggest risk of heavy rain and flooding. But not to be forgotten, this big yellow area as well is still elevated risk of that flash flooding. And outside of that, this lighter green is still, a slight risk of flooding. But if you're in any of these areas in the yellow or red, you really need to be paying close attention to current conditions on Thursday, because we can forecast 3 to 5+ inches of rain. But it comes down to that 6 hour time frame where if more than 2 to 3 inches of rain fall, then all of a sudden you may need to take action. And it's very specific. If you live in a low-lying area, that's where you need to be the ones that are the most prepared. But nonetheless, everyone needs to be prepared no matter where you are, because water can get into your homes, even if you live on the side of a hill, or it can come up out of a river. So you got to be prepared for entry at every point of the house. Let's see if I can get over to this next one.
Definitely so. And Evan, that area right there, when we see this moderate risk, or some people say a high, and then there's one category above that. This is something, I'm not trying to compare this to a tropical event, but some of the rainfall rates that we can see on Wednesday and Thursday could rival some of the tropical events that the Carolinas see when we get like a landfalling system in the Gulf of Mexico, and it kind of rides up the Appalachians. This is kind of in that ballpark of seeing those higher rainfall amounts, especially in the western part. So that highlighted area definitely susceptible for flooding. And if you look, that's included in the Asheville metro area. Especially near the Biltmore Park area,
Oh, yeah.
floods fairly easily. This is the Hickory metro area up into the Winston-Salem, even portions of Greensboro. This is the northern suburbs of Charlotte, even down into the Greenville, Spartanburg, Anderson area. So there's some pretty big cities, some pretty well-populated areas that are in this highlighted risk. So definitely need to be paid attention to the conditions. And unfortunately, it looks like when this heaviest rain is going to fall, Evan, on that 6-hour period would be during the afternoon hours, let's say between 12 p.m. lunchtime and about 6-7 o'clock in the evening. So this is going to be during the commute home. So definitely we could see some flooded roadways with this. So it could really disrupt some of the folks who are trying to commute from school to home or even from work to home. So this is definitely going to be an issue as we go into Thursday.
Right. And I think to kind of get into the more nitty-gritty details of what's going on here, we do have a long wave trough moving across the central United States heading east, and there is going to be some cyclone genesis occurring down in the southeastern portion of that. So just off to our southwest here. And that's what's going to be moving up and lifting northeast and just causing this southwesterly flow to ride up over those, the Blue Ridge Escarpment. And like Scotty was saying earlier, that's why we see the heaviest rainfall totals there, because we get this thing called orographic lift, where basically the mountains act as a forcing mechanism, and they lift the low level condensate, low level moisture up and over, and they just basically wring out all of the moisture that's in the air. And the locations that are right along that front range, just right in there, those are the ones with, they get hammered every single time. That's where the flooding risk is greatest. But with that low pressure system, Scotty, I think there's also going to be a pretty significant severe risk if you want to cover that. I don't know if are you muted,
Yeah,
Scotty?
I'm muted. Of course, I would be muted. Here's the severe weather risk. Portions along, let's say, the Charlotte area, roughly the Interstate 85 corridor, south and east, is under a slight risk of severe weather. That's a level 2 out of 5. Would not be shocked. And actually, I want to go back to this, Evan. This has really been. We've talked about it internally in our chat. This was progged about 7-8 days out. The Storm
Right.
Prediction Center highlighted portions of South Carolina a week ago, saying, "Hey, there's a 15% chance of severe weather." 7-8 days away. That's pretty significant when you say there's going to be that much of a chance of severe weather. So, pretty well forecast. But anyway, slight risk for a majority of South Carolina and a good chunk of North Carolina, and that's a level 2 out of 5. As you get into the foothills area, I'm going to show you the reason why the risk is a little bit lower, but it still needs to be watched, as it's under a marginal risk. And then the general risk of thunderstorms are occurring in the mountains. So this is normally don't show you this, but this is going to be the wind speeds. And I want to show you this for a reason. Let's go into this is tomorrow morning, Wednesday morning. We're going to see, if you look at this area right here over northeast North Carolina, this is going to be the wedge building in. If you live here in the Carolinas, if you're a weather enthusiast, if you know about the weather, if you've watched our show any length of time that we've talked about the Carolina wedge, this is going to be the wedge kind of building in. So as you can see, it's starting around the Virginia, North Carolina border. As we go throughout the day tomorrow and Wednesday, we're going to see that cold air continue to seep into the foothills and the Piedmont. Ahead of that, I know these wind speeds, these are just wind speeds. These aren't the gust. I could turn on the gust here if I need to. Make show a little bit easier. So here's the wind speeds, and this is coming out of the south. So you can see wind speeds or wind gusts 23, 24, 25 miles per hour. Then you can see calmer winds along this wedge front. Where this wedge front ends up eventually is going to be kind of the tell us where the severe weather is setting up. So this is going to be Thursday morning around 1 a.m. You can see portions of the Greensboro, Winston-Salem area, Raleigh, the Triad area, all in this wedge. So it's going to be a little bit calmer up there. Temperature-wise, you're still going to see the heavy rain, but at least the dynamics for severe weather are not there initially. As we go into 3, 4, 5 a.m. Thursday morning, we're going to see a round of precipitation. Let me switch this over to the reflectivity. And so you can kind of see this initial line or initial wave of storms, rain and storms move into the area. That in itself could present a damage and wind gust around the area with that initial batch of moisture moving in. So I want to go back to the wind speeds because I feel like this kind of tells us the story of what's happening. This is around 6, 7 a.m. Look at these wind gusts. These are about 10 meters off the ground. So that's what is it, about 30 feet, I think is around 30 feet
Yeah, 30 feet's
off the
good.
ground. So you can see these wind gusts, and this wedge front is kind of retreating back to the north. You can see that wind's really picking up in the Raleigh area. So wherever this wedge front kind of settles in is where we're going to see the potential for these strong to severe storms. There was a few scenarios that we get more in the springtime, more around March, April with these severe weather setups. But this wedge front, obviously, if you're above the wedge front, north of the wedge front, it's going to be kind of cold, kind of damp rain. But south of it, I mean, we're talking about a 20-mile spread. You can go from temperatures in the 40s to temperatures in the 60s in just a short amount of time. So we're going to have a lot of a lot of moisture, a lot of warm air, humid air, a lot of instability south of the wedge front. North of the wedge front is going to be kind of more stable environment. So wherever this wedge front kind of lines up at is where we're going to see the potential for some strong to severe thunderstorms. The primary concern for those thunderstorms are going to be damaging winds. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing this. Are going to be damaging winds. That's the primary concern. Tomorrow, we'll be able to give out some graphics. The Storm Prediction Center has just sent out an update where now on day 2, we kind of get those categorical risks. We damaging winds, tornadoes, hail threats. So we'll kind of be able to break down the number-wise, percentage-wise of what areas we'll see the threats. But the damage and wind threat, 60 mile per hour or more or higher wind gust is the primary concern. But there is going to be a tornado threat. And wherever that wedge front, Evan, settles, I think is where we're going to kind of see the most concern for the potential of tornadoes. And obviously south of that wedge front, it's going to be pretty moist and pretty humid, a lot of atmospheric energy to work with that we could see some isolated tornadoes develop south of that too. So it's kind of dependent on where that front, that wedge settles. Anywhere along it and south is going to be the highest concern for severe weather. Anywhere north, not as concerned about severe weather, but we're still going to see that heavy rain and flash flood threats. So that's kind of still trying to shake out the details of eventually where that wedge front's going to set up at. Once we get into tomorrow, we should have a better idea, and that'll kind of be able to highlight the areas of concern for the severe weather threat. But again, damage and winds the primary concern. Low tornado risk right now, but that could go up. These risks could go up as we get closer to the event. I don't really foresee a hail threat with these storms. And then obviously we talked about it a little bit earlier with the heavy rain. So that is also the concern. So there's a lot of elements out for the Carolinas. Obviously, I think Evan, our concern would be for Western North Carolina, the mountains of North Carolina, the upstate of South Carolina. The flash flood threat looks pretty significant on Thursday, and then the severe weather threat. I would say at least for South Carolina, I don't see the wedge really dipping down into the South Carolina area. So South Carolina, you're definitely game for the potential for some strong to severe storms on Thursday as the cold front moves through. And then wherever that front kind of sets up in North Carolina, that's where we'll have to focus our attention for the North Carolina area for severe weather. So looking through some of your comments here. Tanya is asking, do you have thoughts for the GSP area? So again, Evan, would you mind popping up the flash flood risk? We can kind of show that.
Absolutely.
And we'll kind of highlight the flash flood risk. I do believe the Greenville-Spartanburg area that's the severe. Yeah, there's the flash flood risk. So, Greenville GSP area, you're in the elevated risk, the high risk for flash flooding. Evan's going to kind of circle your area right now. So
Should have used a different color than red, but it works.
that works. It works. So that's again the severe weather risk is also, I think they're in the slight category for severe storms. So not only we have to worry about flash flooding, but also the potential for some damaging wind gusts and maybe even an isolated tornado in the GSP area. So definitely need to be weather aware on Thursday if you live in that area. Let's see. Someone's asking about Robeson County. That's out in eastern North Carolina. The flood threat is less out there along the coast, or just inland from the coast. And I think the severe weather threat is what we will be concerned about more for eastern North Carolina as that cold front really gets organized and moves across the area. One other thing, Evan, that we didn't talk about, if we see any sunshine on Thursday, especially for South Carolina, Eastern North Carolina, that could really ramp up the chances for severe weather.
Yeah, that's always the biggest hitter on the day of. Everyone's tweeting and waiting to see where that sun breaks out. And a lot of times that's how we can kind of figure out where the wedge is. One, we have satellite and surface station observations, but it helps to know where those clouds are eroding. If, on Thursday, you look up and the clouds are eroding above you and it's starting to get warm and push up into the upper 60s, then yeah, that severe threat is definitely going to be a lot higher for you in that location.
You were talking about the flash flood guidance. I want to bring that up. I've got it pulled up here. And forgive
Okay.
me because it's not the best of graphics. I'm sure the Weather Service and everyone there are working hard to get this, but we'll work with what we got right now. So you can kind of see this is the southeast region, but this is a around anywhere between 2 to 3 inches in a 6 hour period. We could see flash flooding start in western North Carolina around the upstate of South Carolina, and that's possible if you get under one of these heavier rain bands as this cold front's moving through. Definitely could see that much rain in a short amount of time. So that is the flash flood guidance for the 3 hour period. If we go for 12 hours, which is right here, you can kind of see it's around 3 inches or so. So that's why Evan, I don't want to say I'm overly confident, but I'm probably a safe bet that we're going to see some flash flooding occurring in western North Carolina, upstate South Carolina, sometime Thursday.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
I was wanting to see if I had anything else. Here's the severe weather graphic again. This will be updated tomorrow morning on the day 2 graphics. I think it's around 1 or 2 a.m. that will come out. So when we wake up tomorrow morning, we'll probably see a new graphic from there. One other thing I wanted to kind of show you guys, because this is a question that we get a lot of. So let me, while I'm off here, I'm going to pull up some graphics for you guys. We sometimes don't really know the differences when we see warnings and watches and things issued. So I want to pull this up for flash flooding or flooding. So you guys will see this tomorrow. Evan, I'm sure at some point there'll probably be a flash flood watch issued for portions of the Carolinas. So flash flood watch means that flooding is possible. It's kind of just that time that you want to get prepared. And at the bottom of this graphic, that's what it says: be prepared for flooding. If there's a flood warning, flash flood warning, that means that flooding is occurring or about to happen. Some roadways have already been flooded. Move to higher ground. And remember, never drive through flooded roadways. The old saying, when, turn around, don't drown. You don't want to be going through that water just because we don't know how deep it is. And it seems like, Evan, we've dealt with flooding a lot here in the Carolinas over the last several years. So you would think people would know that, but we continue to say it time after time. Don't drive through flooded roadways.
Yep, absolutely. It's one of the number one killers here in the Southeast and really across the United States, not just in tropical cyclones, but just day-to-day life. We saw a lot of it in 2018. We didn't see quite as much in 2019, but still a few events. It looks like 2020 it's going to be off to a roaring start So just be safe when you're going out. We'll have some more updates coming up over the next couple of days as we, really count down the days and hours to the actual event. So pay close attention to our social media pages for sure for that.
Yeah, we will definitely be sending out updates, like Evan said, on our social media accounts. If if you see flooding or if you have any storm damage or anything, and you can safely send us a picture. We'd love for you to tweet us at Carolina WX Group. You can also post it on our Facebook page. It's a little bit messier to kind of find, but if you tweet us, I promise you, there's enough of us that monitor Twitter all the time that we will get that tweet. So send us a tweet if you see anything. Also, of some people asking about school closures, I'm not sure how that'll roll. We probably won't know anything until Thursday. If we do see flooding, we may see some school districts close or release early, but that won't be known until the day of the event. So, unfortunately, Evan, we couldn't get any cold air to work with because this has been one heck of a snowstorm.
I wish our problem was we had too many snowstorms, but unfortunately, I think we just have too many floods.
Too many. And to be honest with you, for you folks who like winter weather, this may be the third February that we don't see much of anything in the Carolinas. It looks to be pretty warm. So maybe as we get towards the middle to later part of the month, maybe we can start to get the pattern to change. But it just looks pretty warm, at least through the first couple of weeks of February. So if you're a snow lover and you didn't you wasn't satisfied by Friday's little snow flurry activity across the area, you may want to hold on because it's not looking too good. Evan, what you got here?
Yeah, so I was just pulling up kind of the extended look. If you look at, well, I probably should go to a more broad view of this. Just looking at the ensembles over the coming weeks and echoing what you said, Scotty. With the exception of the tail end of this rain system that we're looking at, maybe late on Friday, we could see some wraparound snow showers, and then maybe a secondary little shortwave. There's been a little bit of indication of that on the models. Switch over to 12Z here. But with the exception of that little potential, there's not much in sight in terms of winter weather. Let me pull up this, and this is going to be, so you can see,
depressing.
I know, so many buttons to push. Let me come down to the southeast so that we can kind of get a closer look at it. Here we go. So, that's honestly a pretty good signal for Western North Carolina, except for the fact that, most of that entire signal is coming from, I shouldn't say except for the fact, but that signal is coming from this Friday into Saturday, or really later in the weekend, I guess, with that short wave as it moves through, potentially on Sunday. And that is a much better signal than I thought I was going to find when I pulled this page up. That hasn't been there in the last few runs. So we'll see if that stays. If we flip over to the GEFS, it's also pretty decent. But outside of Western North Carolina, if you run it out, there's nothing, really no big synoptic events on the radar for any parts of central or eastern North and South Carolina. So sorry, y'all.
Not at all, unfortunately. We hate it I like winter weather. I love the 70-degree weather we're having, but I'd love to have at least one snow event, decent snow event, but it just doesn't look too likely right now. But we'll see. March always seems to be, if we have a warm February, we'll normally have a cool March. So there's always that hope. So anyways, continue following us. Again, wouldn't be surprised when you wake up tomorrow morning, at least if you live in South Carolina or upstate of South Carolina, Western North Carolina, probably a flood watch issued. The Weather Service likes to do that around 3:45, 4 o'clock in the morning, as they kind of put out their overnight products and early morning products. So if you have a weather radio and it goes off for a flash flood watch, you might want to be mindful of that if it wakes you up early in the morning. But we'll be here throughout the storm, and we'll keep you updated with what's going to be going on. Again, if you see any flooding, remember, don't go through flooded roadways. If you are safe and you can tweet it to us, please do. We'd love to pass that along to everyone else to let them be aware. So, Evan, anything else as we close out?
Not really. You'll see more from us over the coming days.
Definitely. So tomorrow night, check us out on the Carolina Weather Group. We will be our part 2 interview with Dr. or not Dr. he probably is. We could name him Winter Weather Doctor Tom Nizzle, but Tom Nizzle joins us for part two as we kind of recap the history of the National Weather Service. They have turned, um, is it 50 years, 50-year anniversary of Weather Service, I believe.
There's multiple anniversaries going on this year.
Multiple
There's
anniversary, but
150 or
yeah, I think we talked about the 100. We talked about the whole gist of it. So
yeah,
the
and there's
150.
a 50-year anniversary this year as well
Yeah. So
for different
uh,
agencies.
Tom Nizzle will be our guest tomorrow night on the podcast. So please be sure to tune into that. And we've recorded several podcasts in the last couple of days. So be looking for those new ones as well. So we hope you have a great evening. Stay safe out there as you travel Thursday. Definitely the potential for flooding and some severe weather. As always, we'll be here to keep you updated. Um, and if there's time and we're able to, we may even do a little live wall to wall coverage if there's any major storms moving through some of the areas. So just stay tuned, and we will keep you updated. For Evan Fisher, I'm Scotty Powell. Have a great Tuesday evening, and we will see you back here on the Carolina Weather Group really, really soon. Really. Oh.
If you're still here, we're just trying to figure it out, trying to figure out how to turn it off.
Yes, I think we turned it off.